Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In early August of 2023, the city of Seattle was shaken by a horrific crime in the Beacon Hill neighborhood. A young woman in her desperate attempt to protect her mother endured over 100 stab wounds. The brutality of the act left the home drenched in blood, creating a scene so unsettling that even seasoned investigators described it as chilling. This brutal case made many feel as though the young woman must have been the target of some deep grudge, meeting a horrific end that seemed almost straight out of a horror film. But who would commit such violence against her, and what truly unfolded inside that home in Beacon Hill on that day? Today, join me as we retrace the final moments to try and answer some of the lingering mysteries of this case. Please also keep in mind that all the information in today's video has been carefully researched and compiled from multiple sources by our team. If there are any mistakes or points that need clarification, feel free to leave a comment below so we can update and correct them. And before diving into the details, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell right now so you won't miss out on other fascinating true crime stories here. Around 5 a.m. On August 7, 2023, Seattle police received a distress call reporting a violent incident at a home in the 5300 block of 31st Avenue South in the Beacon Hill neighborhood. The caller was frantic, and in the background, the sounds of a struggle shouts and terrified screams could be heard. Just minutes later, officers arrived at the scene. They quickly approached the home after noticing clear signs that someone inside was in danger. Upon entering, they found a young woman lying motionless, her body covered with numerous sharp force wounds. In the house, there was also a middle-aged woman hiding in fear. The woman was quickly escorted outside to safety, where she received medical assistance. Meanwhile, other responders focused on the young woman, but it was already too late. Paramedics confirmed she had died at the scene. Yet what the officers saw next left them completely stunned. The crime scene appeared like something out of a real-life horror movie. In both the living room and the kitchen, blood stained the floors and splattered across the walls, showing the sheer level of violence that had occurred. Trails on the floor suggested the victim had been dragged a considerable distance during her desperate struggle. Nearby officers recovered a blood-stained kitchen knife with a long handle. Forensic teams also found a set of bloodied clothing believed to have been left behind by the attacker. But the most shocking discovery came from the staircase. From there, officers saw a middle-aged man slowly walking down, his entire body covered in blood, still gripping a knife tightly in his hand. Although it was not yet clear what his connection to the victims was, police immediately raised their weapons and ordered him to drop the knife. After glaring at the officers for a brief moment, the man slowly released his grip and let the knife fall to the floor as officers moved in to restrain and arrest him. So, what exactly had happened to turn that home into a pool of blood? What could the young woman have possibly done to suffer such a series of brutal injuries that led to her tragic death? A storm of questions swirled in the minds of the investigators. They had no choice but to set aside their shock at the devastating scene in order to begin peeling back the veil of secrecy surrounding the case. To decode the crime, Seattle police decided to first look into the victims' backgrounds, especially the woman who had survived. She was rushed to the hospital immediately after being discovered. Her body bore numerous abrasions from being tied with cords, and her mental state was utterly shattered, as though she had just witnessed a nightmare beyond comprehension. Meanwhile, the other young woman was not so fortunate. The forensic report was horrifying. The victim had endured a staggering 107 stab wounds, concentrated mostly around her chest and abdomen. Such a shocking number of injuries was rarely seen even by the seasoned officers of the Seattle Police Department. This was a clear indication of prolonged rage. The killer continued striking long after the victim had collapsed. The cause of death was determined to be acute blood loss from multiple wounds. This conclusion aligned perfectly with the blood-soaked scene and the ferocity of the attack. But a pressing question remained: who was this young woman, and why was she hated to the point of being tortured even after death? At first, identifying her was no simple task. The young woman had not carried any identification at the time of the attack, and the only living witness was too traumatized to cooperate with investigators. As a result, The police were forced to conduct a meticulous search of the entire home for clues about her identity. In a neatly arranged small bedroom, they discovered a student backpack, a few technical textbooks, and a University of Washington student ID card bearing the surname Tran. This valuable lead was quickly cross-checked with the residency information tied to the address. Gradually, the victim's identity came into focus. She was Angelina Than Tran, born in 2002, a student at the University of Washington. Angelina was studying engineering design and was only a year away from graduating. She was well known in her department as energetic and creative, participating in many research groups and clubs such as Husky Adapt Bio-Explore, the Society of Women Engineers, and the Vietnamese Student Association. Her professors described Angelina as an excellent student full of passion for humanitarian design projects. She was especially devoted to the elderly community, inspired by her love for her grandparents and her family's traditions. She had interned and volunteered in programs supporting older adults pursuing her dream of creating products that would help them live more comfortably and independently. According to family and friends, Angelina was ambitious, kind-hearted, and deeply loved by those around her. Most notably, she was the only child in the family. The survivor of that tragic night was her mother, Lynn Tran. After receiving medical treatment and regaining some composure, she was able to provide investigators with crucial information about the family's relationships and the events leading up to the attack. The bruises and injuries on Lynn Tran's body were carefully documented as evidence of assault and attempted murder. All signs pointed to one scenario: this was a case of horrific domestic violence spiraling out of control, not the work of an intruder. Even though Lynn was a key witness, police still needed additional objective evidence. Their attention soon turned to the home's security camera system. Multiple cameras had been installed in different rooms, and the recorder was still intact, offering the hope that the entire sequence of events had been captured. Data from the entire system was extracted to aid the investigation. The recovered footage became golden evidence, capturing the truth in unflinching detail. Through the CCTV, investigators watched the nightmare unfold. The argument beginning in the kitchen, the man lunging at his wife, the daughter rushing in to shield her mother, and the bloody struggle that followed. Every action of the perpetrator, from dragging the victim, changing her blood-soaked clothes, fetching additional weapons, to ransacking the house in search of the remaining family member, was captured in chilling detail, becoming undeniable evidence of his crime. Thanks to CCTV, investigators not only obtained sharp, direct proof, but also reconstructed the sequence of events, gaining a clear understanding of every step the killer took. After collecting evidence at the scene, police began questioning the man present there, who was also the perpetrator caught on CCTV. His name was Nguyen Kinh Chau, 54, a Vietnamese American who had lived in the United States for many years. He was not a homeless drifter or a career criminal, but someone who led a relatively stable life with solid financial means. Legal records showed that Chau had no significant criminal history, aside from a minor fishing violation back in 2006. He had lived as husband and wife with Lynn Tran for 19 years and only held an official wedding in 2022. This meant he had witnessed his wife's daughter, Angelina Than Tran, grow up nearly her entire life, playing the role of a stepfather for 2 decades. On the surface, this Vietnamese American family appeared harmonious, and Chau had never been accused of any serious violence before. However, relatives revealed that during the nearly 1 year he spent in Vietnam, Chau began to display unusual behavior. Lingering financial disputes may have contributed to his changing character. When he returned to the US in early 2023, Chau became more withdrawn and seemed obsessed with financial matters and fears of losing control over his family. All of these built up until they exploded into the brutal act on that fateful morning. During the initial interrogation, the man remained disturbingly calm. He admitted to attacking his stepdaughter and did not deny that the entire crime had been captured on camera. However, Chau showed no remorse, instead focusing on justifying his actions. He claimed that on that night he suffered from insomnia due to hypertension and suddenly quarreled with his wife over financial matters. Chau claimed he suspected his wife intended to divorce him and take all his assets. although in reality she had never said or done anything suggesting that. This paranoid jealousy drove Chow into a rage. He admitted to violently attacking his wife to intimidate her until her daughter intervened. Angelina's attempt to protect her mother only infuriated him further as he believed she was openly defying him. That made him even more determined to punish her cruelly. Chow's testimony partly clarified the motive: a toxic mix of blind jealousy, patriarchal thinking, and long pent-up psychological distortions. Later, the victim's mother's account added further details that matched both the evidence and Chow's statements. Lin Tran recalled that around 5 a.m. that morning, her husband suddenly woke up and erupted into a rage without reason, violently attacking her in the kitchen while they were talking. Terrified, she screamed for help, and her desperate cries woke Angelina from her nearby bedroom. The young woman rushed out, saw her stepfather assaulting her mother, and immediately threw herself between them. Angelina tried to restrain her stepfather, shouting for her mother to escape. Thanks to her daughter's bravery, the mother managed to break free from her violent husband, flee into another bedroom, lock the door, and call 911. What happened next was exactly what the CCTV had captured. Angelina fought alone against her stepfather until she collapsed from exhaustion. The grieving mother recalled hearing her daughter's desperate screams before they were abruptly silenced. Outside, her husband's crazed shouting echoed. She could do nothing but barricade herself in the room and pray police would arrive in time. Thankfully, they reached the house before she too became a victim. From these testimonies, investigators consulted criminal psychologists to better understand the rapid escalation of Chow's horrific violence. According to experts, the suspect was the type of domineering man who tightly controlled money and status within the family. His baseless obsession with the fear that his wife would seize his assets revealed both a paranoid mindset and extreme selfishness. This was a crime born out of unresolved conflicts and psychological issues that were never shared, accumulating over time, until they exploded into an irreversible tragedy. From the testimonies and evidence gathered, police were able to successfully reconstruct the entire sequence of this crime. Late at night, on May 6, 2023, Ngiep Kane Chow tossed and turned in bed, unable to fall asleep. That very afternoon, he had just returned from the emergency room after a bout of high blood pressure had left him drained. Yet his mind was far from at ease. It was consumed with bitter thoughts about money. The family had lived for years in a small house in Beacon Hill, Seattle. Angelina Thantran, his wife's daughter from a previous marriage, was a senior at university and spending the summer at home. Ngiep and his wife Lin Tran had saved up a considerable amount of money, and recently he had been haunted by the idea that she intended to divorce him and take it all. It was an irrational obsession, but it had sunk deeply into the 54-year-old man's mind. Around 4:45 a.m. on May 7th, inside their kitchen, Ngiep Kane Chow began arguing with his wife. He grilled her about money, accusing her of wasteful spending and hiding secret funds. At first, Lin Tran tried to explain, but she was visibly losing patience. His absurd jealousy soon erupted into violence. Without warning, Ngiep struck his middle-aged wife hard across the face. Lin screamed in pain, but he grabbed her hair and rained down blow after blow on her head and face mercilessly. Terrified, Lin tried to break free, crying and begging him to stop. But Ngiep shouted back, spewing wild accusations that his wife was planning to leave him and steal the money, while Lin, in tears and desperation, denied that he had misunderstood everything. By 4:50 a.m., the sounds of objects crashing and screams from the kitchen woke Angelina in her bedroom. The 21-year-old bolted upright, still disoriented, but when she heard her mother's faint cries for help, she rushed out in a panic. Before her eyes was a scene of horrifying violence. Without thinking, Angelina screamed and threw herself between them to stop his rampage. She pushed her mother behind her, taking the brunt of the blows from her stepfather. Shocked at being blocked, Ngiep grew even more furious, believing his stepdaughter had dared to defy him. With a roar of rage, he turned his attack on Angelina. She tried to dodge, but couldn't escape. A crushing blow landed on her temple. Dazed and staggering, Angelina was seized by Ngiep, who slammed her to the floor within seconds. Seeing her daughter in danger, Lynn screamed for her to run, then broke away herself, fleeing from the kitchen. She knew she could not stop her husband's madness at that moment. The only way to save her daughter was to distract him. Stumbling toward the end of the hallway, she cried out desperately for help, before managing to take refuge in a bedroom and lock the door to call 911. 3 minutes later, Angelina struggled to get up after the fall. Seeing her stepfather chasing after her mother, she threw herself at him from behind, clinging tightly to his arms. Angelina knew she didn't have the strength to overpower him, but she hoped she could hold him back for just a few seconds so her mother could escape. The two struggled violently on the floor until Nyip Keen Cho forcefully shoved her off, dragging the girl clinging to his back across the living room. He broke free, shoving Angelina face down onto the floor. Before she could crawl back up, Chow yanked open a nearby drawer and pulled out a long-handled kitchen knife gleaming coldly under the light. The blade flashed, then came down again and again. Chow stabbed the young woman in the chest. Angelina screamed in pain, raising her hands in a desperate attempt to shield herself. Chow attacked while screaming insane curses. Angelina weakened and collapsed onto the floor, but he did not stop. Chow continued to drive the knife into her lifeless body, stabbing a total of 107 times until the blade snapped off from the handle. Panting heavily, Chow stood up and looked around. Furniture lay broken, blood splattered everywhere. The blood-soaked body of his stepdaughter lay sprawled at his feet. Only then did the man notice his own clothes drenched, dripping with blood from head to toe. He staggered into the bedroom to change into clean clothes. Then, like a machine, Ngip Kien Chow returned to the kitchen. He pulled a large cleaver from the cupboard, walked back to the victim, and continued his barbaric act. It was only after some time that he finally stopped. At that moment, Chow remembered that Lin had escaped and was hiding somewhere in the house. Weapon in hand, he stormed toward the hallway and the bedrooms to search. Inside the last bedroom down the hallway, Lin held her breath, barricading herself behind the locked door. In her trembling hands, the phone had just connected with the 911 operator. She choked up as she begged for help, telling them her husband had attacked her daughter and pleading for the police to come immediately before breaking down in sobs. Hearing his footsteps drawing closer, she risked climbing out of the bedroom window to escape. At that very moment, police sirens wailed in the distance, shattering the stillness of dawn. In less than 15 minutes, Chow's rampage had taken the life of an innocent girl and nearly claimed the life of his wife. Outside, dawn was breaking over the Beacon Hill neighborhood, but inside the small house, a heavy darkness of horror still lingered. The tragedy had unfolded too quickly, too brutally, leaving behind scars that could never truly fade for everyone involved. With physical evidence, witness testimony, and even partial confessions from the suspect investigators, didn't take long to finalize the case files. Just 3 days after the tragedy, on August 10, 2023, the King County Prosecutor's Office officially charged Ngip Kien Chow with first-degree murder for the killing of Angelina Lin Tran and first-degree attempted murder for the attack on Lin Tran. These were the most serious charges under Washington state law, reflecting the cruel and violent nature of the crime. During the court proceedings, prosecutors requested bail be set at $5 million for Chow. They argued he was a danger to the community and posed a high risk of fleeing since he still had both family connections and financial resources overseas. As expected, Chow was unable to pay such an enormous bail and therefore remained in custody while awaiting trial. The arraignment hearing, originally scheduled for late August 2023, was postponed due to health issues Chow claimed to have. On September 7, 2023, Ngip Kien Chow finally appeared before the court and coldly entered a plea of not guilty to all charges. His denial of responsibility deeply outraged the victim's family and the public, though it was not unexpected to legal observers. From that point forward, the case moved into the trial preparation stage, with prosecutors presenting a vast collection of evidence. The King County prosecution team made it clear they would pursue the harshest possible sentence against Chow. With the charges brought against him, he could face life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. On the defense side, despite the overwhelming evidence, Chow's attorneys were expected to argue for leniency, possibly by claiming mental instability or momentary provocation. However, legal experts widely agreed his chances of avoiding a severe sentence were slim. The brutality of the crime and the immense loss he had caused left little room for sympathy. And as of now, in August 2025, the official trial for Ngip Kine Chow still has not taken place. It is expected to be held in the near future. The defendant remains in custody at King County Jail with a bail amount set at $5 million, which no one has posted. Justice for Angelina Tran is something the community continues to demand, and this case is seen as a critical test for the judicial system in handling severe domestic violence crimes. And you, what do you think the sentence will be for this cruel authoritarian stepfather in the near future? Share your thoughts with me in the comments below. And if you believe today's story deserves to be heard by more people, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to my channel so we can continue exploring more mysterious stories together. For now, I'll say goodbye and see you again in the next video.